Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pam Laricchia, unschooling mom and author, bringing you interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free Exploring Unschooling ebook, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia, and this is episode number 8 of the podcast, and it's the 24th of February 2016 as I record this. In this episode, Ohman, Anna Brown, and I answer listener questions. I love that together we can share multiple perspectives. I think it brings much more value to the conversation. And thanks for sending in your questions. We're answering them in the order received, so if we didn't get to your question this time around, we'll get to it next month. And to submit a question, as always, just go to livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. As a bit of a personal update, my life in the last week has been very focused on finishing up the book that I'm writing, because my goal is to get the manuscript to my editor in the next few days. I love that my editor is also an unschooling parent, so I get great feedback not only on the writing, but also on the content itself. We have a lot of fun working together, so I'm really looking forward to moving on to that stage. This one's been a long time coming. And I also want to say thank you very much to those of you who took a moment to leave a review on iTunes. I deeply appreciate it, and it's great to hear that you're enjoying the podcast. Okay, let's move on to this week's quote, which is from Maria Popova, the curator of brainpickings.org. She writes, "We live in a world awash with information, but we seem to face a growing scarcity of wisdom. And what's worse, we confuse the two. We believe that having access to more information produces more knowledge, which results in more wisdom. But if anything, the opposite is true. More and more information, without the proper context and interpretation, only muddles our understanding of the world rather than enriching it." Now, I actually use this quote in my book as well, and it jumped out at me as I was looking for this week's quote because it connects beautifully with some of the answers that you're about to listen to. You'll hear us mention sharing information with our children a few times, sharing information that's useful to them in the moment. Unschooling is all about information in context because that's where it holds real meaning for our children and enriches their world. If you have anything you'd like to add, head on over to livingjoyfully.ca/podcast and share in the comments for episode 8. And now, on to your questions. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Ohman and Anna Brown. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi, Pam.
I'm excited that Anna and Anna are going to answer listener questions with me again. Yay. Just to let you guys know, we've had quite a few questions submitted for today. So if we don't get to yours, what we're going to do is we'll just bring them forward into the next Q&A episode. So we will be answering them in the order that we've received them. Okay, so let's get started. Our first question is from Danny. She asks, how to deal with school kids. Our daughter was asked by one of her friends, both of them are 9, how she would learn without going to school. And she told our daughter there's important stuff in school she would need one day in her life. Then she asked a question and our daughter couldn't answer. So she said, and that's why you need to go to school. Our daughter got a little bit angry, and my husband, who was listening to the conversation, tried to intervene without causing a bigger argument. The girls like each other, and you can clearly hear that she was just repeating what her parents had told her. But neither my husband nor my daughter wanted to tell her that what she is thinking about school is not necessarily true. We already had the problem that one of our neighbor's sons was truly amazed when he heard that we are home educators, and he said, "I wish I could be homeschooled," but his mother said that's not an option. So how did your children deal with questions like that? I wish there would be an answer that says it's okay to go to school and it's okay not to go, without encouraging the kids to question their parents and without letting them question our way of living and learning. Okay, who would like to start?
I will start. Anna, speak up.
No, you go right ahead.
Well, the question I love has so many parts with me always, and I have to kind of break them apart and take it by the pieces. And first of all, the question is for our family was always if it was worth it to be with these children who were confrontational. And Danny did say that the girls enjoy each other, and that's great. So, but I just want to let everybody know that that is something to ask yourself, because we choose to create our own worlds in unschooling and surround ourselves with people who make us feel good. And if somebody's confrontational all the time, that might not feel good to our kids. And that's something that we want to look at if we want to continue to be with them. So I'm going to assume that these friends are worth it for Danny's daughter to be with. Let's see, where am I going next? Oh, that's the next part was when my kids were going to be around other people that were in school or whatever, we would always do what I called briefing and debriefing. So before we were with them, we would talk about what might look like and how much they wanted me to be around in case something uncomfortable like that did come up. And then we would get a better idea of how to handle stuff instead of just letting the kids, blindly take these questions or whatever. And usually when things like that happened, it was just because we were with family members. And once in a while, they would test my kids. And I would always be around with them to make good, take the questions and not put pressure on my kids or have my kids feel bad from these kids testing them. And one thing that I did was kind of turn it around and make a joke about it when they would test my kids and ask them if they knew something. And then I kind of say, so what's the answer? And they would tell them, and I'd be like, so now they know the answer and they didn't have to go to school to learn the answer. So, and it's that actually, it's a lighthearted manner, and I was joking, but it is a really accurate way of showing how unschoolers do learn. We didn't have to go to a school or a book or anything. Somebody just gave us information, and if my kids were interested in it, then it went into their bank of knowledge. So, and mostly, like when Danny said, she wished there was a way to show that each path was right. There is a way, if you want to be with these kids, to just focus on your common interests and, just shift the attention to the reason you're together, the joy that you're sharing, your kids are having a good time, and talk about the good food or whatever. It's just kind of a bait and switch kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's really what I wanted to add was just that, is to kind of help the kids have just some words or some things to say that just kind of switch that focus and back to what they love doing together. And sometimes you even say, even though we do things differently, I love being your friend, and let's go play in the creek or let's go watch the show, or let's do, just giving them, they don't have to engage in that necessarily. And we didn't have this problem as much because we live in a big city with a gigantic homeschooling community that's like 26,000. And so even the kids in school are very familiar with homeschooling. So it's not this kind of, woo, we've never heard of that. But you can see, and Danny said it too, that basically this child's probably asked why she has to go to school and is being told, well, you have to go to school, blah, blah, blah. And so she's just trying to test that out. And so it kind of just helped me to let my kids know this isn't about you. This is about her trying to understand what she's being told by her parents and other things. So you guys can just focus on having fun and being together.
Yeah, around here, homeschooling wasn't as well known. So there were occasions where, like, we'd have kids. I remember I had a child come running up to me after she'd met Lissy, and just like, really, she doesn't have to go to school, just completely disbelieving, thinking that Lissy was telling a story or whatever. So one of the things that I did, when we came up across these kinds of situations, was to just basically say, yeah, no, it's okay not to go to school. It's legal. It may not work for everybody, but it's something that works for us, and we're having fun with it. The other thing I wanted to point out is just to realize too that it's okay that the story of the neighbor's son. It's okay for him to wish that he could be homeschooling, and it's okay for his mom to say that's not an option for them at the time. Right. This is reality. This is how in our lives people learned that homeschooling was even an option, right? Now they both know it exists. Now they both know that it's choice, and you just leave it at that. Right. And as Anne was mentioning, just having some sort of a reply in the back of your mind. You mentioned that, I've learned this thing. Another thing may be having a question of something that your child's interested in, and somebody else probably wouldn't know the answer to, so they could lightheartedly ask that one, and they might not be able to answer it. And plus, other times I know my kids have just said, I don't do tests. I don't like tests or whatever, and just moved on. It's just something, the way they can close off that piece of the conversation and move on to something else. Yeah. That's always helped them. Because then also, no matter which way you go, right, the other child gets a glimpse. Whether they see you, oh yeah, you're right, you learned something, or oh look, there's something that I don't know, or oh yeah, I guess the question is like a test, and they don't have to do tests because they're not in school. So either way, it was just a little snippet of homeschooling, and then moving on to whatever the actual fun was.
Right.
Well, that's with it just came to my mind, like at the checkout at the grocery store, the kids always got asked questions there for some reason.
Yeah.
And I would always say, if they had known they were going to be tested, they would have studied. So, and, my kids would laugh and they would laugh and everything. And the thing about a child wishing that he were unschooled, we had that happen all the time. And I just did my best to give our world to them when they were with us, and and that was a gift to them to show, not contradicting what their parents had told them, besides the saying that we're fine, it's right. Like you were saying, Stan, it's legal and everything, and kids are learning a lot, and here's our world, welcome to it. And they are choosing to be with us because they can feel the difference. So there's so much going on without even words being said.
Okay, let's move on to question number 2. This one is from Jamie. She wrote, I have been getting the message that if I continue letting my kids play video games as much as they like, then they won't have any imaginations or they will lose their creativity. Where's the proof? Now, I'll start with this one because I was just curious. The question is, where's the proof that they will be losing their creativity imaginations? Well, I don't agree that they will be, and I certainly don't see any proof of that in my own children. If anything, it was just fodder for all their creativity and imaginations. I think if you flip it, though, maybe the people that she's talking to think they too are seeing proof of it in their own children, because their children may be using video games and TV and stuff more as an escape from all the expectations and things that they have to do with their days. So they are using it to zone out. So they may look like, kind of they're turning off, or they're losing their imaginations and everything when they're playing with that from that perspective. But that's not the mindset that unschooling kids bring to those activities.
Yeah,
somebody else want to jump in?
I just think that is a really important point, and I think that's kind of where people see they think they're looking at the same thing, but it's really so different, because what we saw was really what you said. Like, I saw them, engrossed in video games and television, and then you would see how it would just, this rich play would develop from that outside, other places, in their writing, in things they would be doing, stories they would be telling. And it was really just fodder. But again, they weren't needing to escape from difficult day at school or from other things like that, which, I've been known to use TV for that. I love watching TV, and it is kind of a time of quiet for me. It's like I'm just sitting, I don't have any responsibilities, I'm engrossed in the story. And so I felt like my kids used it very differently than even I did. But yeah, so I thought that's an interesting point.
I've never been anything but in complete awe watching my children play video games. Their minds.
Yeah.
And if anyone took the time to nurture and encourage their child's interest in video games and jump in and talk to them about it, look at the magazines with them about it, listen to their victory stories and their frustration stories, they would also walk away just feeling completely impressed with their brains. And I bring that up all the time because being a library director, I get parents dropping comments about stuff. There was a child in yesterday with a handheld, and the mother said something about, how he should put it away and everything. And I just always say, I'm so impressed with the child's brain that they can do what they're doing on these games. So that's one way that I always looked at it. And the whole proof thing, like you were saying, I'm not sure if she was looking for proof that it was deteriorating the creativity and imagination, or looking for proof that it wasn't. But, the thing, there is no proof in anything besides what we see and feel in our own children.
Right.
And that comes from a place of trust and being involved in their amazing passion with them and being a part of joy with them. And that's how we can see the full richness of it instead of just the outside surface view of it. Jacob and Sam are 21 and 25, and it's still happening. I mean, it's been happening their whole lives. And every time they get together, it's still their point of connection. And they go off in this other world that, is just amazing to me with their language and their, conversations and everything. And most of all, for me, it's a beautiful thing to see that this is how they connect each other, even as young adults. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I have a friend, Pat, whose son is very into video games and Pokemon and things like that. And one of the things I love about her is that because this does come up a lot with people asking, they're just this focused interest in, be it a game or Pokemon, she is so excited about it because she has spent that time and has engaged with her child doing that she just, suddenly becomes telling them what an amazing world it is and how complex it is and how it's impossible to remember all the things. But yet these kids know all the different Pokemon and all the different things. And her enthusiasm really sets the stage, I think. So I think that's really helpful tool for parents to just realize, share that joy that your kids have, be involved with it, be able to share it with other people. And you'll see kind of this, from other parents, like, gosh, I never knew that about it. Or, yeah, I never really thought about that piece. And so sometimes that's a helpful tool.
And one other piece that I find really interesting is the idea of creativity, too, because creativity isn't coming up with random ideas out of nowhere.
Right.
Creativity is taking in so many things from around you and then finding new connections, finding new ways to look at things. So when they're playing and when they're watching and when they're doing all these things, they're bringing in new pieces that are going to, be fodder that they can use for their creativity, not dampen it.
Right, absolutely.
And because it's coming into themselves and who they are, it's going to come out as their expression of it. And much of Jacob's art is inspired by video game art and everything, and that's what he always loved first and foremost. So I know no other thing that expands my kids' imagination and creativity more than video games.
Yep, that's awesome. I hope that helps, Jamie. Now, there was a question that was directed at Pam Sharushian from episode 2, where she was speaking to me. We did a 10 questions episode. So what I'm going to do is post that question in the comments for that episode and ask Pam to take a look when she gets a moment. Okay, so now we'll move on to a question from Deanna. She writes, unschooling is such a misnomer. Given the experience of these veteran homeschoolers, what word or words or definition would they give to this way of being with children? What was their overriding philosophy or mantra or specific vision that brought them the most clarity about unschooling, that helped keep them on the path, that helped them during difficult moments? Do you want to start with that one, Anna?
Sure. I mean, The term unschooling, really the only reason that I use it is it has been helpful in finding community. So it's kind of this quick way to identify people that are also just living and exploring the world together. I feel like in our day-to-day life, that's not really something that I'm thinking about. I'm just kind of thinking about us living and learning and just enjoying this journey together. And I guess I really find that kids learn just like adults learn, that it's not really that strange or unusual. We have an interest, we pursue it, we may use mentors, books, trying things out. So I guess I haven't really been that fixated on like having a definition of it. It's really just been living life together and exploring. It takes us in all kinds of directions. But again, I will say that unschooling has helped, me meet other people and create a community, nation and worldwide, of other people that kind of feel the same way about life learning. But and then mantras, just I've talked about those before, and when you and I talked last week, but it was just that kind of trusting the journey. There's plenty of time. We're exactly where we need to be, and just anything that kind of brings me back into the moment with myself and with my kids and enjoying our life.
Anne?
For me, I never disliked the word unschooling, and there's been a lot of conversations about it throughout the years. And I recently read Blake Bowles' book, The Art of Self-Directed Learning, where he talks about how he thinks unschooling vilifies anything schoolish. And he didn't like that because he himself had been involved and benefited from teaching and from being a student. But to me, that's not school. That's somebody wanting to learn something and seeking out a teacher. So school is forced, and kids are told they have to go to school. So in that way, we are unschooling. And for even the word self-directed learning, to me, that gives a specific vision of what our life looks like, and it's not the truth, because my kids aren't going around, as Anna said, looking for things that they want to learn. They're simply living life following their questions and their curiosities. And so the three of us have been writing and talking about unschooling for a very long time. I have been since 1998. So there's no easy summary of it. The bottom line. But what I love about the word unschooling is that it's clear about the one thing that we do not do, and that's school, where what we do cannot be summed up. You know what I mean? So unschooling is clear about that. And to sum up what it is, if I had to try, partnering with your children and utilizing the world to help them follow their interests and their curiosities and their questions, and living a rich, full, connected, aware, and really magical life together. Mm-hmm. And for a mantra, for me, it's always been, as is because my Shine community is based on it, focusing on how the children are shining and what makes them feel good. That's when they light up and shine. And even during the challenges, to understand that the challenges are not unschooling, they're life. And unschooling, especially during the challenging times, I was so grateful for it because my kids did not have the added burden of all that school hands to you. So that's basically is, focusing on what makes the children shine and following that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm mostly going to say the same kinds of things that you guys did. I'm good with the term unschooling because, as Anna mentioned, it's really just a label for me. I don't think it's possible to convey all of what unschooling is with just a word or a phrase. And unschooling does a good job of meeting other people where they are and what they know, which is namely school, right? And it's the compulsory nature of school that we're getting away from. Right. And when I'm feeling challenged, what helps keep me on the path, and I mentioned it in the conversation with Anna last week as well, for me, it was hanging out with my kids more. Usually that happened when I was starting to feel a little bit more, disconnected from them. And that was it. I would see them playing, hear them laughing. As Anne said, I would see them shining. I would join them in playing and laughing and shining. And that would always bring me back to remember that this is the entire point of it. So that was what always helped me whenever I was going through some difficult moments with it. Okay. Our next question is from Jenny. How does an unschooling parent apply principles at home successfully without getting in the child's way? I'm using the word principles to describe things like respecting one another's property and bodies. For example, one of my kids likes to drag a chair across our hardwood floor and it leaves scratches on the floor. Another example, another one of my kids likes to aggressively grab my toddler and pick her up and swing her against her will. How can I gently enforce these principles in our home without making my kids feel bad for being inclined to do them in the first place? Would you like to start, Anne?
Sure. I've always found that our children love, desire, and need information, and that's part of our job as unschooling parents to provide them with information as to what would happen if you did this or this or this. And so that is a conversation that you can have, maybe not in the moment of when something is happening, that you are trying to convey your principles about. As far as the principles, the dragging the chair and everything, the principle is to not harm anything that has value to someone else. And for me, I always try to make sure to convey that an alternative choice was so easy. Here's a different way we can do this. Isn't this easy? And look, it doesn't hurt the floor. And just always have options to discuss and talk about and give information, and making it feel to the child like it's an easy thing to change, direction, so that not only does he feel good about himself, but everybody else can feel good also.
Yeah, and something I wanted to say about this is I feel like I like the idea of principles, but what I see often in the practice of this is really it's just rules that they've changed the name to make it softer. And so I think it's important to kind of examine that. And in her question, when she's talking about enforcing principles, really, you don't enforce principles on someone else. So, I mean, to me, that feels more rule oriented. And we've just really found that it's kind of dealing with situations as they come. We also have hardwood floors, and we just talked about how dragging things would make marks. So we thought about, okay, what do we need to do here? We put felt on the bottom of any chair that needed to be moved so that it could be slid around. We had stools if it was an issue was you were dragging a chair to get to an area that was high. So kind of figuring out what that underlying cause was. And if it's just wanting to push something or have some physical outlet, well, there you go. Find something else, like Anne's saying, that's easy to find an alternative for that physical, outlet of pushing and doing and big muscle movement. And as opposed to just, I don't know, having this kind of rule about it, I think it doesn't have a lot of meaning behind it, and it doesn't solve the problem, like the reason they were moving the chair to begin with.
I love your point, Anna, about expanding the parents' own thinking about changing things in the house, because we've done that so many times, because a child might be doing something out of frustration because something is difficult in the house. And,
right.
Instead of focusing on the child and the problem, think of the bigger picture. How can we make our home more accessible and easier to joy and for our kids? So that's fantastic.
Yeah, because it really helps to not break things down to a yes or no.
Right.
Do this or don't do that. And I think that's one of the big differences that I know I struggled with a bit, at the beginning, and I can see through Jenny's question, there is a difference between pointing something out and redirecting it with other options, etc., and shaming our child for having made that choice in the first place. And we're often doing that with an eye to try and change their future behavior, right? I don't want you to do that next time, versus giving them a smorgasbord of choices so that they can make other choices in the future next time it comes up. So that's one thing I was always careful with, is not to give the impression by my reaction, through even just a physical reaction or my words, that I think less of them as a person as a result. That's the difference between making it the action and making it the person.
Right.
So if I'm very matter of fact, oh, look, scratches, what did you want to do? Do we, can we grab this? Would you like me to move it for you? All your different options, focus on the action instead of the person who made the choice, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
then the other piece, because she's talking about without making my kids feel bad. Sometimes that happens. They didn't think of the other
Right.
choice, and they're like, oops. And if my child's embarrassed after, I can certainly validate that and commiserate with them, because I've been embarrassed by my choices as well over my lifetime.
Right.
So, that's also something that we learn from. So, there's never anything wrong with those moments. Those moments aren't bad. They happen. We move through them, right?
Right, I agree. And just I wanted to touch on the toddler piece, just since that was a part of her question, because something Anne said reminded me of this. I really have found that kids want information. They want to, understand what's happening around them. And so with that example, something that we did a lot when the kids were younger is really talked about body cues from others, and, how it looked like they were feeling, and talking and helping that younger child express how they're feeling about it. And it just really set the stage for them to be watching how they were impacting others. And so again, I think it was just all about information in the moment. It wasn't about punishing or stopping a behavior, because most likely with the spinning the toddler around, she's just trying to connect with the toddler. She's wanting to be with her. They're having, she's having
Right.
fun
Sounds
with
like a
that.
joyful thing.
Right, exactly. So it's finding a way to make that joyful for both of them. It doesn't have to be we're enforcing principles of not harming someone. It's like, no, let's figure out how to make you both have fun with this activity.
Mhm. Right. And
Yep.
with me, it always comes back to, as I've always said before, helping the child to feel good about himself, as Pam was
Right.
saying, and everything, and be in that place. And that information is the best thing to help them to feel good about themselves, and no matter what. And that was part of our briefing and debriefing. The briefing was giving information if we were going to a program at the library, that's going to be expected that we kind of, sit still and watch the show and everything. If you don't feel like doing that, let's not go. If you feel like you can do that, and this helps them, once they're there, to not be confronted by adult authority, if they're doing something wrong because we didn't give them information about it. And then with our debriefing afterwards is, how did that go? What information could you use next time, to avoid something that made you feel bad? But it always does go back to making sure the kids feel good about themselves and moving
And
forward
have the
from there.
information, right? Have the information they need to navigate their environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because that's their goal. That's such a good guide, right, as to how things are going. Okay, our next question is from Susan. She writes, I have a 12-year-old ADD boy, and we are in our second year of unschooling. We have been told that his type of symptoms are to do with his focus, and that sugar has an effect on him similar to opiate drugs. We tried restricting his diet, and he just stopped eating. We still continue to tweak his diet wherever possible, but no relief with the ADD. It seems like everything in dealing or coping with ADD and ADHD is all restriction and rigid rules, which is kind of the opposite of the unschooling lifestyle. Our boy has the energy of a sloth on a good day. Brushing his teeth can sometimes be an all-day job for me. It's scary for us to see him be bored all the time and not know what he wants to do, so he just goes back to his computer. Just wondering if anyone has ever dealt with this type of situation before. Could unschooling actually hurt this child rather than help? Thank you. I guess I'll go first this time. I'll mention that, my eldest was considered ADD when he was in school before we discovered homeschooling and unschooling. So I can totally understand the fear that Susan's feeling. But I do think that deep and active unschooling is going to really help your son. I don't think unschooling can hurt this child. I know it certainly helped mine. Just for an idea, I think you'll find a huge difference, not overnight, but over time, after you drop the focus on trying to get him to do things. If you, here's the other piece. Don't focus on trying to get him to do things, but also don't just leave him on his own to figure things out. What will help a lot is to take that energy. I can tell that you're feeling very energetic. There were lots of exclamation points in there. So that's great. Take that energy where you're trying to control and use that energy to support him in figuring out the things, or in just doing the things that he wants to do, places that he wants to go. Get him the games that he wants to play on his computer. Help him play the games. Talk to him about the games. Find the food that he'd like to eat and let him eat that food. Make it for him. Bring it to him happily. You know what? He will start once it's not restricted and he's choosing it, then that frees him up to start seeing the relationship between, whatever he's feeling or not feeling after he eats these foods later. So if you can just think of the next few months as throwing yourself into supporting him, rather than worrying about what you think he should be doing and trying to control him to do that, I think you will find like an almost new person, and he'll be in a much better place. And while you're supporting him, you can also take lots of time to read more about deschooling and unschooling, because I think you found yourself right smack there in the deschooling process. So just a few more tweaks, and I think you'll start to see some really great things.
Good.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
I should have gone with Anne.
Yeah, that was really, really excellent. This is another case where information is extremely valuable about, like Pam said, that when food isn't restricted, it frees him up to make connections between what he's putting in his mouth and how he feels about it. And that's when we give our kids information, then they're able to give themselves information. You know what I mean? They're able to kind of frame these things. And when we have conversations with them about such things, where we're not judging it, we're just observing it and saying, how do you feel? How do you feel after you have this and everything? So to help them make those connections. I think it would also be valuable, Susan, if you focused on who he is without thinking that he has ADD and ADHD, because I feel like that is skewing your perspective of his behavior. And he is who he is, and he is who he is because he's been in school a lot, and he's just unschooling. As Pam said, you're still deschooling and everything. So there is really no label for this except for who he is in his heart and his own very beingness, that he so needs to have seen and validated and celebrated, and to continue to make I don't know, not labels, but judgments that are, I don't know, with his behavior, saying it's because it's who's teaching is something. All these things you could just lose all of those things and focus on that which lights him up and join him in that place so that he can see himself shining in your eyes. And that's a way that he can start feeling good about who he is again. Anna?
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, I don't know that I have a lot to add, except that, the very same things, what does he love to do? And we're saying, oh, he's bored, but then he's turning back to his computer. Well, he does know what he wants to do. He wants to be on his computer. So how can we help him with that and feel better about that and enjoy that with him and facilitate that? I think that's important. And we handle food very much the way that you just handle. I give information, and always have since they were very little, about why I'm making the food choices that I'm making, how they make me feel, how I feel when I make different choices, and why I've done that. And I've really, there's never been restrictions here. And I've really seen that play out over the years. When my youngest daughter was 13, she decided she was going to stop eating wheat because she just felt really strongly that this was causing problems for her. Well, it's been 3 years now with no wheat at all, and it really was helpful for her. But me and I had an inkling that wheat was an issue for her even when she was much younger, and we talked about it and did.
but it was, again, just information with no, have-tos around it. And she got there, and now it's not an issue for her. So, I mean, again, I'm just big about providing information and trusting that everybody can, if that's the one thing I want, is just to listen to their own body. Those are the decisions that are going to stick and actually help them in the end, because there's not one diet that's perfect for everyone.
Yep. And I just want to reiterate something Anne said as well, is that you can just drop those labels right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've already found out enough. You've already used the labels to gather information to know that a lot of the information you find out there is all about restriction and rules. And you know that that's not working. I found very, very soon after we started unschooling, I did not, I only needed those labels for school. I didn't even need them on weekends,
Right.
and summer vacation. This was a school thing. And, you discover who your son is, and that's who he is no matter what. So, that's the person that you want to support. That's the one you want to help gather information about himself, so that he learns how he ticks and all the things that help him in his days. The labels aren't going to give you any more useful information, I don't think.
One more thing, if I could, is that
Sure.
I've kind of noticed with my kids that they tend to become how I'm seeing them. You know what I mean? And I need to make sure that I'm seeing them for who they are and not adding anything of that is my own definition or preconceived judgments or anything, because they need to, as I said, to feel like they're shining in our eyes. And that's just how they will have the freedom to continue to be who they are and learn to love themselves as they should, as they are, when that's reflected in our eyes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, let's move on to our question from Stephanie. She wrote, "We just started unschooling our two kids, son 13 and daughter 16, last March, when my son had really been struggling for a long time in school and had a complete breakdown and said, 'If this is what life is like, I'm not sure why I should live it,' among other heartbreaking and alarming things. We have been deschooling since then and finding our way into unschooling. My son, who is very focused on one or two things at a time, naturally is really not showing many signs of curiosity or willingness to explore new things. I'm not sure if we are just recovering from the trauma of school, just uber focused, or if maybe he's not a good fit for unschooling. Any advice or suggestions? Do you see anything wrong with being so focused? How do I encourage his exploration of new things? He has a general attitude right now of, if it looks like anything school-like, he's turned off by it. He didn't used to be this way. He used to love learning and exploring new things. I'm concerned that school really did deeply traumatize him, and I'm not sure how to support him in his recovery." Would you like to start, Anna?
Sure. To me, with this situation, it sounds like he is doing what he needs to gain control of his learning. And I feel like it takes time to heal from a difficult school situation. I've seen it a lot in our local community. And it sounds like his was even on the toughest side of that. And so, for me, I think it's more just about allowing and connecting and being with him and letting that unfold. I don't really understand the focus question, I guess, a piece of this, and that I think that he's focusing on what he loves. And so in doing that, he's going to gain mastery and he's going to learn more things and he's going to see what it's like to stick to this thing that he loves until he's tired and moves on. I mean, that's very much, we all have different learning styles, but I think of my husband, he tends to get an interest and he goes full force into that interest and everything is that interest for a really long time. And then he's done. And then we move on, to the next interest. So I think that's just a really common learning style that people want to kind of immerse and focus and do. And, with my nephew, who's now a grown man, when my sister first took him out of school because of a difficult situation, he had that same kind of attitude of anything that looks like school, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go to a museum. I don't want to do this and whatever. And she just really honored that and let that unfold. And it did soften. But you don't have to do anything school-like to learn. This child is learning from just pursuing the things he's interested in, whatever those things he's focusing on, which again, I'm not sure we're sure from the question, but be it video games or TV or books or running outside or doing whatever, there's learning in all of that. And so I think it's just trusting that and rebuilding that trust again in this family that, we're here for each other and that life is worth living. And there's so many wonderful things to see and do and model that herself.
Yeah, I agree. It takes such a very long time to recover from the trauma of school, especially when it has beaten us down. I'm 53 and still recovering, learning from my unschooled kids. And Stephanie, it's so important to wrap him up in goodness and just allow him to be, because that's the very thing that school took from him, his very beingness, and he's just wanting to get it back again. And honestly, this is our children's only job as unschoolers, is to be who they are. And when a child is recovering from school trauma, being who they are is going to look very different from a child who's always been radically unschooled, because they've had that beaten down and beaten out of them and told that what to learn and what to do and what to say and what to think. So, yeah, whatever it looks like with him being himself, just know that it's really necessary and important and right, and it's his job to do exactly what he feels like doing. And we talk about expanding our children's worlds, and I hear that that's what you're concerned about, but the child's inner world needs to feel secure and safe and trusted and loved. And when that foundation is set, then you'll find that he'll be ready to expand in his own time and in his own way. And the important thing for you is to not look for that or wait for that and just think of this as a phase. It's really important for you to see him for who he is right now and honor all of that, all of his healing heart, and be there with him and celebrate that which he is drawn to and wants to be doing. So, yeah, just basically celebrate him right now as he is, a healing person that's learning to be whole again.
Yeah, well, I have goosebumps now. And Stephanie, yeah, exactly right. I love the point about his inner world, because that is something, that he hasn't had a lot of time to explore up till now, so him having this time to get to know himself, to not be expected to do things, to not be forced into doing things all day, a way of life that he was not interested in, that didn't fit him well. And I'll just say that when my kids left school, they completely avoided anything that looked school-like for more than a year. So that is totally fine, totally normal. And the other piece about focusing on one or two things that they are passionate about is really amazing. Their curiosity might not be for new things, but if they're still diving into something, they're curious about that. Mm-hmm. So it's not that he's not showing any curiosity. It's just that his curiosity is focused maybe right now. And that's one of the huge mind shifts for me, was realizing that that's not limiting. That when I looked at my kids, when they were really diving deep into interests, their curiosity about that thing still led them to so many things in the world. So I'm going to link in the show notes to an article that I wrote about that, because you might find that interesting as well. And I'll just, say what Anne and Anna both said, support him by continuing to follow his lead. Just be with him today. When he says he doesn't want to do that because it looks like school, validate. Yeah, that sucked for him. You're happy that he's not there anymore, whatever he wants to do now. That would be awesome. Okay, I'm looking at the time here. I think we have time for one more question. This next one is from Danielle. It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does.
Danielle writes, "Hi there. I've always been very child-led, but we were quite new to unschooling as a concept and way of life. So there may be some things that I am still unsure of, but I have really enjoyed your newsletters." Oh, thank you. Thank you, Danielle. "I have a battle in my head over a TV program my daughter likes to watch. We don't usually have limits on TV, but she has started to ask for a program I just feel is quite conditioning in a negative way and not beneficial for her long term. It's Lego Friends. I find the program to be influencing her in a negative way. Like now she asks if she looks pretty, so I feel uncomfortable with my daughter questioning her looks as she is only 4 years old. I like to make our home a yes environment, but the program is on Netflix, and so it came up as a suggested program. By forbidding it, I am probably making it more desirable. I am sure as the years go by, there will be many more programs that interest her that I am unsure about, so I feel I need to really think about the best way to deal with this. Any thoughts would be appreciated." That's great that you're thinking about that, Danielle. Would you like to start, Anne?
Sure, I agree that it's fantastic that you're preparing yourself because you know this will come up. And the whole pretty thing, I was just thinking about today because somebody had posted something on Facebook about how they were sorry they told a woman that they were pretty instead of saying that, they're brilliant or whatever. And I think the word is what we make of it. And especially with our young children, that this is still a way that you can jump into what your child loves, mirror her shine and enthusiasm without having to, you yourself, conform to society's definition of pretty. Because things are pretty. Nature's pretty. Flowers are pretty. We say things are pretty. Put a scarf on the dog or something, you say the dog is pretty. So it's not, I don't think we need to villainize the word pretty. And the other thing is, I assume that this isn't the only thing going on in her life that she is asking if she's pretty. You're focusing on it because you're afraid of all the society connotations from it and everything. But I just think that's giving it too much power in the way you don't want to, the very way you don't want to give it power. So, I'm sure she's shining in so many other ways. I'm sure there's so many other parts about that show that you can talk about. And that's the thing, the value of shows is the conversations and the information. And in fact, just the other day, I asked Sam, I said, "What was that show that I hated that you and Sam used to watch?" And I said, the name of the show was like the names of two idiots. And Sam goes, "Are you sure it wasn't Three Idiots, Ed, Ed, and Eddie?" And I'm going, "Oh, that was it. And I swore there was no redeeming value in the show whatsoever. And yet one day we were at the checkout at the grocery store where all life happens, really. And the checkout person said something about a scam, and my boys knew what a scam was from watching Ed, Ed, and Eddie. So I remember that to this day. But anyway, that's, there's just value in so much. And you're right that denying her of it will make it more valuable to her. So again, like anything else, jump in and join her there and have your world expanded and enlightened as well.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say, because really it's just similar things to what Anne is saying, but it shows come and go. Just enjoy it. See, it's hard to know what someone's getting out of an experience, and a lot of times what we see with this kind of cultural filter on is not at all what they're taking away. And I'm brought back to my friend Pat again, whose son was watching Dumbo, which I don't know that we ever watched, but apparently it's really has some ugliness in this Dumbo show, okay, this movie. And she was kind of horrified by it, but she, instead of saying she was horrified by it and getting upset, she asked him like, "Oh, what's going on, or what do you like about it?" And what he saw were these beautiful things. He wasn't focused on this ugliness and this hurt that was happening. He liked that he flew, and he liked that he was a cute elephant and he liked, these different things. And so I think sometimes we just put too much on it, just it is what it is. They're taking things out of it that they enjoy. Be there with them in case there's questions. And sometimes it is appropriate to just say, "Ooh, I don't like the way that feels," or "I don't, that," and share those things too. But yeah, I think making too much of it is never going to get us anywhere.
Yep, and I'll just reiterate the same things because that's such a great point. That last one there, Anna, to make sure that you're still there with them, not saying, okay, well, you can watch it, but I hate it. So, I'm going over here. Don't ever talk to me about that show. Because the point is that they're jumping off places for wonderful conversations. Right. We don't know what our kids are taking in because absolutely they're not seeing the shows through the same filters that we're seeing the shows through. So, these are time for little chats here and there. What did you like about that? Oh, just even sitting there with them, and instead of watching the show, if you don't enjoy it, watch your child for a while and see what it is that they're reacting to, comment about that. Some of the things that they find interesting can give you ideas for other things to bring in because, yes, this isn't the only thing going on in their life. And even the things that we disagree with, like you said, those are pieces of conversation as well. So there's always lots of learning, much more than saying no. I mean, the only thing they learn when you say no, you can't watch it is no, they can't watch it. And gee, I wonder why. And that's where they're stuck, right? There's nothing else in it. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been about an hour now, and that was really fun. We got through most of the questions. I think we have 4 or 5 left, and we will start with those next week. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Thank you so much, Pam. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. You can also get your free Exploring Unschooling ebook at livingjoyfully.ca/exploring unschooling. If you'd like to connect, you can also find me on Facebook at Living Joyfully. Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.